Hey gamers, do you think if I opened a... Oh, my voice, what the fuck? Let me start
Puberty.
that again.
Keeping that in.
Keep that in. Oh my, okay. It's fitting because I played this when I was going through puberty. Hey gamers, do you think if I opened a restaurant called Hole in the Wall Chicken and had it all vampire and spooky themed, people would get it? Because I sure would. It's me, Jason.
What is a cat? A horrible little ball of terror, but enough talk. It's me, Professor Bopper.
And move over Simon and make way for Konami's next big Castlevania character, Rihanna Belmont. You know, cause Chains and Whips excite her. It's me, Patrick. Welcome to RPGaymer Season 3, Episode 12, a podcast about Castlevania.
Okay, like Patrick said, we're talking about what is one of my legit favorite series of all time. We get to talk about Castlevania. This is going to be so exciting. And also, we have one of our very first guests has come back. Professor Bopper is here again. Do you want to tell us kind of what you've been up to? What have you been doing lately?
Sure. I guess not a whole lot has changed since the last time I've been up on the show.
But you're saying your life hasn't like revolutionized after your last RPGaymer podcast?
Nah, see, the revolution in my life happened around that appearance, and ever since then, because that was when I was like moving, and that's when I was getting like the whole new studio set up, and ever since then, I've just been kind of chilling and keeping YouTube going, keeping the streams going here. I guess one of the big changes that has happened for me, YouTube-wise, because it relates to this video, is that since the last time I was on, I have done some Castlevania videos, and some of them, two of them have become, I think, two of my three most popular videos on all of YouTube. So there's a little bit of a...
I was looking at you, your viewership on like the first Castlevania one was pretty big. Yeah, I just saw those this morning. Yeah,
it was it's something like 45,000 on Castlevania 1, and then Simon's Quest is like 90,000 around there.
Well, by the time you get to the newest one, you'll be in the millions. It'll be great.
Absolutely nobody watched the video I did on the adventure, though. But we'll talk about that.
Womp.
I don't blame them.
I
wouldn't click on that either if that were me personally. There ain't no way.
I mean, honestly, that's the reason you're here, because you put out that first one, and I think I messaged you that day, and I'm like, "Yo, we're getting the band back together. We're doing a Castlevania. We're doing a Castlevania episode. You want to be on it?"
Yeah,
and you were like,
great.
"Sure, yeah,
I'm ready."
see you in 7 months.
yeah. See you later.
Because it takes a while sometimes, but it did give me enough time. I got the whole new setup going. I've got the Castlevania Order of Ecclesia poster, is what splits my monitors right above them.
Nice.
Even though that game sucks, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
Hot take coming out
We're
early.
starting off strong,
see.
but maybe that'll be just the teaser. I don't want to break the flow of the episode.
Well, I think a good place to start in general is just kind of talk about like what was your entry point. I know we harassed you severely for the age gap between us and you last time when you made us feel hecka old in our discussion, but like I'm a Castlevania baby. Like Castlevania was coming out when I was a kid, like legitimately the Nintendo ones, and I remember my dad coming back from a hunting trip when I was 3 with the first Castlevania. He like went to this random like place that sold bait, and they had a Nintendo game there, and that was like the first game that he brought back to me. So that like I've been in it for a long time, and I think I played almost every single entry since. But what about you guys?
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. At a bait store, it's not like a Bass Pro Shop game or Bass Fishing game or something.
No.
Yeah, I also started on the very first one, but we grew up with an NES, so you would think I played it at home, but I didn't. My uncle would come and visit every summer, and he would bring some games, and one summer he did bring Castlevania, and then left it at my grandma's house. I'm pretty sure it's legitimately still there. So we would play in the summer, and I remember thinking it's just so different from Mario, and it sounds so weird and cool. And that was kind of where it started for me. And then really, I think my interest kind of got into it for the Game Boy Advance, Circle of the Moon, because I owned that console. It was my own. And that's kind of where I really started, and then took off from there. Definitely haven't played all of them, Patrick. So I've missed a few here and there, but I like the ones that I have played.
Cool.
Yeah.
How about you, Bopper?
So I guess because I didn't grow up in like 1932 or whenever.
Wow.
Podcast
over.
I wasn't there when like the first Castlevania games were coming out. By the time I'm old enough to even have memories, the series was pretty firmly in the Metroidvania era. But my introduction to the series was Angry Video Game Nerd, and this is something that I talk about in my Castlevania 1 video. But he did a retrospective of the games that he grew up with, and then I saw that. So
what a classic video.
The aesthetic of it, caught my eye, the difficulty of it. And I had played some NES games. I'd played some Super Nintendo games. My parents had NES and SNES. Most of their NES stuff had been long gone. They still had the console, but they'd sold most of the games. There's only a handful of stuff left, like the launch title Baseball that everyone loves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And I just got really fascinated with the series and like looking at it. And I went to GameStop, saved up money on my allowance, and bought the Game Boy Advance port of Castlevania 1. So I didn't start with like Circle of the Moon or Harmony of Dissonance or any of the Game Boy games, or even like Dawn of Sorrow. That would have been new at the time. I played Castlevania 1 first, like you did, but it was the GBA port. And that is quite the proper introduction to truly old school games, because, growing up playing like Mario World on the Super Nintendo, that game can be tough if you're 8, but you can at least save in it. And discovering that like saving wasn't even always a given back in the day, and just getting bullied from level 2 onwards was an experience. And then I got frustrated, played Dawn of Sorrow, and then from there everything kind of snowballed to where I think now I've not played every Castlevania game, although it's getting closer every year to having caught up completely with the series.
I wish I knew who it was. I just watched it recently, probably doing a little research and whatnot on Castlevania, just like refresh my mind. And someone on YouTube who has like some acclaim for what they do ranked Castlevania 1 as one of the hardest Nintendo, like NES games, like original NES games in general. And which I saw, like, when you're talking about being a kid and that being like the introduction to the genre and whatnot, like that is a challenge. Not many kids would get enjoyment out of something like that.
And I didn't, like, to be clear, I thought it looked cool. I didn't enjoy it at the time. Nowadays it's a completely different story. I love Castlevania 1. It makes it hard to talk about the difficulty, because I'm at the point now where Castlevania 1 is like just actually easy for me, because it's all
like patterned.
It's all pattern recognition, and it's a game I've played on loop. Castlevania 3 though, that's a different story. But we'll probably get to that later.
Why do you think people play Castlevania games? Like, we're talking, I mean, I think it depends on where you're starting, and it definitely talks about what style of Castlevania games, because there are a variety. But if you had to like overall talk about it, what do we get from these games that we're not, maybe I would say that we're not seeing from other games, but like what makes this series so special, being around for as long as it's been?
Yeah, I like that question. I think it's gone through like 2 distinct like eras in my mind, which you probably already knowing what they are. But I mean, the very beginning, like, it was horror was the thing. Like, you don't really see bats and vampires and all this crazy stuff in like Mario games. I guess you might see bats and stuff, but like, it's spooky, and I think that was the theme. And it's like, hey, look at this game. Yeah, like, that's the draw. Like, hey, it's scary. And then as it moves on later to Metroidvania style, I think you get the satisfaction of the grind and level up that could be really fun, that you still see today. Like, people still play these. I'm still playing Rogue Legacy 2, and it's like the exact same style of feeling you get from playing those, but it still has the theme of like horror to it. And I think it becomes literally synonymous with the video game in general. When you think of spooky, scary, you probably think of like Resident Evil survival horror. When you move away from that and you think of more of the arcadey or kind of approachable scariness, it's games like that just deal with, the macabre and skeletons and all that jazz.
It kind of felt like where Final Fantasy was just like so rooted in Dungeons and Dragons, like blatantly, like we know that Final Fantasy was basing a lot of what it had for Western audiences, or off of what Japan thought Western audiences wanted. But Castlevania is just so different because I think its origins are very like folklore and myth and fairy tales, like in the darker stuff. So I think that's one of the reasons why people still really enjoy the series, and like kind of like what you were talking about, everybody knows the story of Dracula. That's not really anything that is a surprise. Like, we all are just so rooted. It's a part of our culture to like know what vampires and mummies are. So it's not like D&D where you have these like created worlds of like more recently. Like, these are some of these like way back folklore tales that we're kind of seeing. So I think it's exciting when you pick up a game and you see something like that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all that, because I really do think that it's a stylistic thing. I think it's a tone thing.
Yeah.
With Castlevania, because the series really from beginning to end, because I suppose there is an end for this series, which is kind of uncommon, which in a weird way, it's sad.
I don't want to talk about it.
It's sad. It's really sad, but like, 30 years is a long time for a series to go on for, and it never really changed the tone. Like you were saying, the folklore, but it also is like deeply grounded in old horror films and camp Halloween horror in a way that no other game, very few games I think have the confidence to do, because even as the series transitioned to a more anime style with Symphony of the Night, with if you look at the art for like the PS1 games, the GBA games, that artist, I think her name is Ayami Kojima, like very distinct style that just captures the macabre, the darkness, but also the camp, because you'd be playing Castlevania 1 and you're fighting like a double barrel mummy fight, and then you're playing Aria of Sorrow and there's enemies called skeleton kickers, and I think it just always retains its the darkness, but also the sense of humor and the camp that are around that.
Yeah, it's interesting to see like all these different ways that like you can appreciate the series, because I don't think any of our answers were like completely the same. You can just look at it from so many angles, and you just hurt me every time. I know it's going to get brought up a lot that like the series just kind of feels like it's over. But for those of people who haven't really ventured into it, why would you say still give this series a chance? Because I feel like it is very much so, depending on where you're picking up, really worth it.
Yeah, I think give it a chance, because I feel like these types of games don't necessarily lose their like luster as the years go on. I mentioned Rogue Legacy 2. Like it's a similar style, and the reason why you should try to play it is, if you want to respect the growth the series and the genre has had, you can go back and try it again. I think that it's probably the most cliche answer, but Symphony still holds up pretty well. It's a pretty fun game. I think I most recently played it like 8 years ago. It's been a long time. But like it's still pretty.
Yes, that voice acting definitely holds up.
But like,
it's down.
It goes up and down, and it's to the point now where like it's funny and campy. It is what it is. But it's still a good game, and like they're still really solid. If I had to pick like a pinnacle point to start, I'd say probably go there. It's where you probably see the more like solid entries for the game. If I picked a personal place, I really like Aria of Sorrow. Very similar styles, but I think that I don't know, they play a little bit differently in like the storytelling, if you will. But yeah, it's worth it, because I think if you like that style of game, there's a whole freaking genre named after it. After all, like you might as well see what it's all about and go back and have fun with an older game.
Yeah, I would double on the Aria of Sorrow as a good starting point for the series, because I think we are, again, because the series is over, it's now aging. And I think all of the games, not all of the games, I think most of the games still hold up incredibly well, but there is an adjustment period, I think, especially for the older games. And even a game like Symphony of the Night kind of has PS1 baggage. I get kind of frustrated playing it to this day just because of the load times. You die and you have to go through the menus and everything. So I would recommend Aria of Sorrow, because it has great art. It has a fun story, and super smooth, and not with the very crushing difficulty. I think it's a good entry point into the series to get your feet wet.
Personally, I think story-wise, Aria of Sorrow would be really hard to jump into. And it's like spoilers for listeners, maybe jump ahead a little bit, but like finding out that you are the vessel for Dracula, I feel like would be really hard to not if you don't understand the rest of the world. So for me, I think the first two GBA titles are a little bit better, like Harmony of Dissonance and Circle of the Moon. I wouldn't say they're like the pinnacle games of the series by any means, but I feel like Circle of the Moon was kind of a little bit of a reboot. And it didn't really have a lot of like, oh, we're crafting or we have to worry about like builds and stuff like that. And Harmony of Dissonance, I just feel like is the best blend of Metroidvania without too many RPG elements. Like you level up, but it's still Castlevania. Like it's like you just really have your whip and your sub weapons and a little magic mixed in. So for me, I just kind of feel like story wise, they kind of all mimic that what the originals were, but still kept it fresh enough. Where like Aria, I'm sorry, I think for me it's the deficit is really just that story, really good story, but like not for a new person.
Yeah, and if anybody's joining this off recommendations, I guess the one sort of pushback I'd give to Circle of the Moon specifically is that game is really, really, really difficult. I think it is about as tough as some of the classic games. Like it's harder than Castlevania 4, it's harder than Rondo of Blood. Because it basically has like a lot of classic Castlevania hallways, but you have to backtrack through them. It's
all the armors and all that are in there. Yeah,
pacing is slow. Yeah.
So the series has been around for such a long time, but where are we seeing the inspiration to other games? I know we mentioned Metroidvania as a genre, but where is it really spreading?
Go for it, Bopper. You got this.
For me, I don't want to be that guy.
Be the guy.
But I'm going to be that
Just
guy
do it.
from Software. And I think the popularity of Dark Souls is this sort of gentle transition away. Because really the final true Castlevania game in any sort of classic style was Order of Ecclesia 2008, 2009. Demon Souls comes out, and I think the torch of that Halloween horror, medieval, dark, macabre gets passed to it, because I think in a lot of ways the From Software games, Bloodborne in particular, is kind of what 3D Castlevania should have been.
Yeah,
you're fighting skeletons and bone wheels and scary monsters, and it brings that sort of difficulty back from the old days where action economy is super important. So I think like that's where we see it. I think the Souls-like genre is sort of the modern torchbearer of a lot of Castlevania's
it's a 3D Metroidvania, right?
Yeah, especially Dark Souls 1. Yeah,
3D. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
Patrick, what about you? Where do you think?
Like I think it kind of depends on where we're talking about, or if like, because obviously not all Castlevanias are Metroidvanias, and we like. The hilarity of saying that, because Metroidvania has Vania in it. That's where you get Castlevania from, which was revolutionary for my husband because he didn't know, but he's not a gamer.
He just thought it was just a word.
He's played one Metroidvania now, and he's like, "Oh, I'm a gamer now." Like I get it. Like this is, and he's really enjoyed the series, which I think is great. But I think what actually, and this actually hits my point, what relates to him more is the core experience of Castlevania, circa the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo. You had games like DuckTales and Chip and Dale and Batman and ActRaiser, and like that's a part of what Castlevania is. Like it wasn't necessarily this open map and I kind of get to choose where I want to go and explore. It was still a very like linear level based experience, and I think we see even that be referred to in other series, like obviously Bloodstained because it's the spiritual successor, but even in games like Shovel Knight, or there's a game that just came out as an indie game called Bat Boy, and it's about like you are on a sports team, and it's like I think Mega Man and Castlevania are very synonymous. Like one is kind of like the folklore version and the other one's like the hyper futuristic version, but Bat Boy is like you're on the sports team and you're a baseball player, and all the other people on your team become like the villains, and you go to the levels and defeat them and whatnot. But it's still in that like very like classic Nintendo style. And I think those simple games are also being like we see the references to Castlevania in those as well. I think it's kind of nice because, you know, like everything is basically an RPG these days.
Mm-hmm.
And it is nice to see some things just not be an RPG, right? So
Yeah.
I get excited when we see those types of games. But what do you guys think?
That makes sense. I'm glad you brought up indies because that's where my mind went to. I think we just see so many indie games that are taking the spirit of Castlevania, the spirit, and they're like really running with it and making it exciting and fun. So you get all of your Dead Cells, Binding of Isaac, like games that are like maybe they've taken the theme of like that horror and like brought it in and kept it going. Because as Bopper was saying too, like much to our chagrin, we do not get many more Castlevanias anymore. But it's still alive and well. Like every month or two, I feel like there's a new game coming out or an update. And shit, talking of Dead Cells, they just had a Castlevania crossover. So like it's still, you still get the influence, you know, to this day.
So we're talking around the series, right? And we're talking about like inspirations or like where should you jump in or like what makes it special. Let's talk about specific things in the series now, because obviously, like, this is the bulk of what people want to hear about. They want to hear about, like, this is where we get canceled, by the way, if you have an opinion on any video game and what is best and what isn't. And I say that begrudgingly because some people were very upset about what I said about Secret of Mana and the Think episode. But what were some times in this series where you were just kind of like, yes, mind blown? Like, this is such a great moment, whether it's gameplay feel or something that happens in the series, like whatever. Like, what are some of these big moments for you?
I'm gonna go back to Castlevania 1 because basically the plot of that game is you're just walking into Dracula's castle and you're gonna kill him.
Fucking shit up.
You're just gonna, beat his ass, and that's how it's gonna be. And the first like 3 levels is you going through the entrance hallway and then you're snaking up and around and you're going up the castle and you can see Dracula's like bed chamber or his tower or whatever it is off in the distance. And then when you defeat the mummies and the floor collapses out and you fall all the way down into the aqueducts and the crypts below the castle. And then that
activate trap card.
We're doing this again.
Then that Walking Edge, I think, is the song that plays when that starts kicking in, which is a much like slower and more intense theme. I was like, oh god, the game just got real.
Now the game really started. The tutorial's over.
Yes, and like level 2 and 3 can have some tough bits. That's the point where Castlevania 1 becomes a true nightmare.
Yeah, I think for me the wow moments didn't come from the NES ones. I think those came because it's just like, cool, I'm 6 years old and this game's amazing. But I think more so when I get to more of the Metroidvania styles, I get those moments. If I had to pick one spoiler one, it would be the Aria of Sorrow reveal that Patrick talked about. That was pretty cool. I did not see that coming. But if I picked another one, it was honestly probably Circle of the Moon, which isn't my favorite game at all in the series. But I think it was when I started to develop a liking for like RPGs and the level up grind and whatnot. But using those DSS cards was really kind of fun. I saw the idea of getting variety and how I could maybe unlock them because it was random drops. But just thinking like, man, it's so cool. And like, I just got, what's it called? The Mercury card. Now I can shoot fireballs. And like that was a really cool moment. And like it compounded throughout the series as it kept going, and it made me realize I love RPGs. And like I like how this is going. And that was a really, really pivotal one for me. I like that moment.
I am personally offended that you fuckers did not say Symphony of the Night gooping you when you think you've beaten the game. And
that was my backup. That was my
I was like, that is the goopiest goop that ever gooped. Like, you know what I mean? Like, goop.
Yeah.
It's just such a big moment in gaming because it's not, we didn't really see that in a lot of games before where it's like the princess is in another castle and there isn't a
JK, it's this castle. It's just
game.
Upside down. You better get the fuck back up there.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking of like Dawn of Sorrow, and I'm like, you know, when you beat Dawn of Sorrow and you beat Agumi, and like the game doesn't feel like it ends there because the giant fire demon, and you're just kind of like, wait, there's more. But that all started from Symphony of the Night, and I played that when I was a teen too, and I was just kind of like, this is so legit. Like, this is a very exciting moment.
It's easy to forget just how crazy the Symphony of the Night fake out ending is. Because I think for a lot of Americans, for a lot of people outside of Japan, it probably felt more unsatisfying and weird because we didn't know who Richter was. We didn't know Rondo of Blood at that time. But the fact that it became the standard Castlevania from then on, like not the fake out endings, but the dual castle. So Harmony of Dissonance does it. Portrait of Ruin does it. I think that sometimes it's easy to forget just how important that was. Because even like, I think about it from time to time, like God of War Ragnarok just came out last year. It's fake out ending. It's very similar to Symphony of the Night. It's not super similar.
La 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 la. I haven't played it.
Don't worry. It happens. It happens pretty quickly. It's not a.
I was gonna say it's pretty early.
Yeah. Okay.
But so that's like just a super important moment, I think, in gaming history that can be easy to overlook.
I want to comment on that too. You said important moment in gaming history. I agree, and I'm a little more unique in that I played Symphony like 15 years after it came. It was like a long time after it came out. Actually, I think, Patrick, it was the summer before you and I met at college. That's the first time I played it, and it's one of 2 games that I have emulated to play. The other one actually happened to be Aria. Sorry, I've only emulated Castlevania games. And yeah, it was great, and that still held up. I even knew like it was coming. But like experiencing it later, it was just like it's a cool moment. Like it culminates in such a neat feeling to, I don't know, like just thinking back about it and sitting at the computer and playing through that. It's so cool. And like moments like that can, I won't say transcend time, but they could like last for decades later. Like it's just really neat. It's such a cool thing.
Yeah, I'll throw one last moment in there, just because I like it a lot. Is Rondo of Blood when you rescue Maria. And you can, I don't know if either of you played Rondo.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Playing as Maria is so funny because you really, it's classic Castlevania. You're grinding through it. Then you rescue Maria and you try her out. And then the game becomes a complete stomp. And the tone shifts and you're destroying the entire game. Her cutscenes towards the end are like really silly. She calls Dracula like a big meanie.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is this moment was the downfall of Castlevania because then it went anime as fuck from me.
Yeah, they landed right into that.
No, but I'm sure some people feel that way. I think it's really funny that the game at this point, like 6, 7, 8 entries in, that was notorious for its difficulty, did a reverse difficulty curve and also made it really silly. Because Rondo of Blood I played for the first time last year. I had the flu and I was like laying in bed. So honestly, getting a much easier second half of the game was merciful with how I was feeling.
Yeah.
So
fair.
I think bringing that up is a really good point too. And I think being able to not play as a Belmont at that point in the series was a really good idea. Because, you want to see games expand what they do. You think of Mario 2 and getting to play as Toad and Princess, and even Luigi plays differently than he does. Everyone's a little bit different. I think that makes the game a little bit more dynamic. And have you played the non-Metroidvania Bloodstained games?
No, I've only played that main one.
Yeah, I've not.
They're both really fun. There are 2 of them. I enjoy them so much. But like their big thing is every level you unlock a new character and you can actively switch between them at any point in the level. It's like they're all traveling together and they all have their own like banes and boons. And I think to me, seeing that it makes, like we said, like it just makes a game more dynamic. And I wonder what Castlevania would have been like if we hadn't switched to Alucard for Symphony of the Night, or if we we hadn't had Maria play like that.
I feel like Konami would have kept trying, because like Alucard wasn't the first, and neither was Maria. Like there was other characters you would jump around as. I'm gonna forget the name completely, but there's someone in
the thief, right?
Well, Grant is in 3, but then in Bloodlines on the Genesis, you play as someone else.
Gosh, the guy with the spear?
Yeah, he's got the spear. Yeah. So I wonder if they're just trying to see with like what would stick.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like they would have kept going. So if Alucard didn't work, I bet they would have tried something. No, they still did. I mean, like Soma is not related in a sense, I guess. But yeah, anyway, sorry, go ahead, Bob.
But Soma still plays a lot like Alucard, though.
Yeah, totally.
It's, yeah.
Yeah, because you have Castlevania 3, they really did the Bloodstained thing, or I guess Bloodstained did the Castlevania 3 thing, because you have like
20 years later.
You have like 4 different paths, or I think it's 3 different paths in the game that you can take, because you can get Alucard, Sypha, or Grant depending on which path you go, and you can swap between them in Trevor Belmont, I believe, is the Belmont Trevor. In that. And then Bloodlines is like really weird, just because it is weird. It makes the Bram Stoker novel Dracula canon in the Castlevania series. So like, if you were, I don't think the Castlevania story or the canon is like worth a whole lot, because the Castlevania stories tend to be just pretty silly. You can play them in whatever order you want, but if you did theoretically want to experience the entire story, you would have to read Dracula by Bram Stoker at some point.
Hey, fun side story. That is actually the only reason why I actually did read Dracula, was I wanted to know, like, not because of freaking Bloodlines, but I was like, I'm interested in this, and this is the series. The series turned me onto that book, and I was like, I should read this because I want to know what they're talking about with this Morris family. So I was like, it's kind of dull, but it's okay. And with that little book tangent aside, let's take a little break. I need to refill my water anyways, and we will be right back.
And we're back on our conversation of Castlevania, and I want to continue this discussion by talking about some of the best mechanics in the series. And I know this is probably really hard because of the different styles, and how long the series has gone on. But what were some of the ways you felt the series was innovative? And like, Bopper, why don't we start with you?
For me, I think my favorite mechanic in the series is the sub weapons, especially super early on. Castlevania 1, Castlevania 3. Castlevania 3 is a little more complicated because of the powers you get, but in Castlevania 1, I love the sub weapons because they complement the whip so perfectly. I think a lot of people, when they go back and they play old Castlevania, whether it's that or Bloodlines or 3, they always assume, okay, it's old, it's clunky, this was limitations of the time. But like, when you look at all the different weapons and you look at the way the enemies move and where they move and where they are on the screen, everything's built around that like little whip. So like, you whip left or right, that's your only option. And then you have to make a decision when you get new sub weapons, like which one do I want to keep, which one do I want to use, because they all cover like different issues. Whether
unless you kill that enemy and it just falls right into you, and you're like, shit, and then I got the knife again.
You've got the knife, you lost the holy water. Unfortunately, at least in Castlevania 1's case, it's just the holy water. You just use the holy water and it destroys everything. But the axe, covers everything above you. The holy water covers the ground. The stopwatch is just completely broken. The dagger sucks. Like, there's so many. But it theoretically has a use because it covers all the ground that your whip can't. So I love the sub weapons. I love how they complement the main action gameplay, and I love the variety that they have and the give and take that you have to make with choosing which one you want to use.
I wish they influenced the levels like they do more in, say, like some of the mid Mega Man games where you can like dynamically skip parts, whereas I feel like in Castlevania they more just make certain parts more manageable, and maybe some bosses obsolete. But like, I am right there with you. I don't think Castlevania would be fun if we didn't have the sub weapons. I think that, like you said, they are the way to make your experience more custom to you. And I don't know what I would do without my boomerang.
Your boomerang cross.
I don't know how I forgot to mention the cross, because it's awesome.
The cross.
Because there are there's I think 2 great games in the series to see this in action, which would be the Game Boy games. The first, like the OG Game Boy games, the Adventure. And Castlevania 2 Belmont's Revenge. Because
you got no love for Legends?
Well, that's Game Boy Color. That's different. That's got a whole lot of stuff. And I think these 2 games offer a good counterpoint to each other, because I love Legends. I think it's underrated, but the adventure has no sub weapons,
right?
And they didn't really change the design a whole lot around it, and you can see that. Whereas Belmont's Revenge gives you the axe and the holy water, and it's just a much better game for a lot of other reasons. But you realize how much more dynamic the Castlevania combat and action becomes when you have like these different tools beyond just the whip.
I think the next expansion of that we kind of saw, I know, Jason, you mentioned the cards, which I thought was a really good idea. I personally like that, but I think the next step was kind of what you saw in Arya and Dawn.
The souls.
The souls, like, legitimately made the game basically like Castlevania Pokemon in a way.
The
like
literal demon souls.
literal demon souls. I mean, just being able to completely do a loadout based on the monsters that you're defeating, I thought was so much fun. And that's when you see the game get a lot more Metroidvania-y too, because some of the bosses that you're defeating kind of like let you get out to different parts of the world. It's not so much just like, here's a key. It's like, no, here's your double jump, or here's your float, or here's your way to like break these blocks and whatnot. And like, I think it's super fun. I wouldn't say it's necessarily innovative, but I think it was done really well.
I agree. I think for my take on it too, I kind of completely forgot about sub weapons. I think it's just because it's so ingrained in like what the series is. But I did want to point out the item crush that you could do later on, where you use like more hearts.
Yes.
I thought that was really cool. And like, I don't
Limit break.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I don't remember what game it was. It might have been Circle of the Moon, but like your crush with the cross made you like in this pillar, and you just look so cool.
I think that's Harmony. Where you do
is it Harmony? Okay,
it's
it's definitely it's a Game Boy game because the sprites look like
it's
shit.
It's actually a lot of them, because I think Rondo, it's also the big cross.
Fair.
So
perfect. I love it. See, look, so many good stories. I also want to point out to Patrick too, I think just the general Metroidvania-ness of it, like getting your double jump, your glide, you could turn into a bat, like those were the fun things, and adding those to the series really gave it legs for me. And like when new games would come out, or specifically like probably the new portable games, I would think like, yeah, that's what I want to play. Like I want to do that all again, take my powers away again, death, and then I want to try it again.
Just thought of like, oh, I can't make it here, and there's this like little sparkling piece of armor, but I know if I come back here later, like that's definitely gonna be something
that sword's gonna give me +2 damage, and I want that damage. So
and it's pretty much always satisfying too. I guess this is slightly a tangent or a nitpick, but I've always been bothered thinking of this mechanic of like finding new ways to navigate the world. In Circle of the Moon, you get the ability to push metal boxes before you get the ability to break wooden boxes. So there's this window in the game where you can push metal boxes, but not wooden boxes, because you have to headbutt them. And it bothers me every single time I go through that game, because you should just be able to push them.
Nonsense. Literal nonsense. Well, I think that's a good transition, because I also want to talk about which ones didn't work, and apparently that's something that didn't work for you.
Well, mechanically it's fine. I think it's just like, had they just swapped all the boxes, had they just swapped the metal and wooden ones locations, it would have been fine.
They really wanted to like mind fuck you and be like, why can't I do this? And then make you go back to that catacomb or wherever it starts.
Make you just go back and grind for DSS cards for 8 hours.
Yes, exactly. Which I did. It was great. Yeah. Sorry, go on.
So this is me being really silly and petty, but I think knockback is literally one of the worst things in existence. Even to the point where those Bloodstained remakes that I'm talking about are like, they give you the option to take knockback out.
Oh, really?
Because you know that's like 90% of your deaths. And I'm sure that they want to ground like some of these older games in realism, but nothing sucks more than to jump and to get hit by something that's like sailing across the air and just like land in the pit behind you, especially because you can't like manage your jumps like you can in some other games where you can like float forward and backward.
If you're going, man, you're going. Like that's where.
So I think that was one of those things where like, I don't know why they ever thought that knockback was a good idea, Just it does not work at all. I wouldn't necessarily say that's like a mechanic, it's not really something that you get to play with, but man, it can really F up an experience.
It's funny, I also have a non-mechanic that I hated, and I think it's just the limitations of the Nintendo. But for the older games, I really didn't like if you moved a pixel away, the enemies would respawn, because that's where they start.
Oh yeah, that's a memory limitation.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a mechanic, but I'm like, damn it, it's so frustrating. And oh my gosh, like I think it's probably the reason why the game is considered to be harder. And like, what is the phrase? It's not a bug, it's a feature. Like that's a feature of the game. But like if I was looking at the mechanics that I just don't think really worked, I feel like some of the weapons didn't really work when you got to like equip them. So I'm thinking of like Aria of Sorrow. If you get like a sword and it swings like that, it's okay, but I felt like it was always inferior. And I think it's because I think it's because the game always in my mind has a distance with the whip, and I liked that. And to me, maybe it's personally, I just didn't like some of the weapons that just didn't work as well.
Yeah.
I like the variety, because for me it's like the whip, you can only, unless you're playing Circle of the Moon, the whip only goes so far. You know what I mean? So you can, now it's a whip on fire, now it's a whip, but it's kind of a sword. So I liked it where, you had your daggers and your swords and your two-handed swords, your axes. I know what you mean. Like, it's not as snappy as whip. See what I did there. But it is, I still think it adds to some variety at least.
Fair enough. Hey, wait, I have one quick side story too. I think the name of the character is it Juiced? Just in Harmony?
Yeah.
Juiced? What?
Justy Belmont or Juiced Belmont?
Juicy Belmont. So I love that, like in Nathan's whip in Circle, you could hold it and it would just spin, but in Harmony, it just went like flaccid, and then you could flip it, and I was like, this is the most ridiculous thing. So maybe that's the best mechanic. But anyways, I digress. Yeah. Bopper, what do you have?
Whip.
Yeah, flaccid whip.
I am a certified Castlevania 4 hater. I don't like the 8-directional whip.
Okay.
I am not.
That is a hot take.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I don't like about it is that it trivializes. Not only does it trivialize the entire game, it trivializes it because it makes sub weapons entirely useless. You want to hit something with the holy water, just whip diagonally down. You want to hit something with the axe, just whip up. And I don't think the game's like platforming compensates enough, because they have the hooks that you can swing on, but they don't really do a whole lot with it. I think it was an interesting. I feel like they were responding to criticism about the difficulty, and then they realized it was wrong, and they never brought it back, because Rondo gets rid of it. The Game Boy games get rid of it. Not even the Game Boy Advance games let you do that.
And then would you say that is your worst game then?
No, not Castlevania 4. There's significantly worse in the series. I think Castlevania 4 would be my pick for most overrated if we were to do that.
Okay.
I would agree with that too. I heard so many good things for it, and then it dropped on the Wii Virtual Console. I'm like, here's my chance, and I'm like, this is kind of just medium. So anyways.
I think it was cool from just a Super Nintendo standpoint, right? Like just the fact that it was on the Super Nintendo. I think it was the first Castlevania on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah,
I think so. Had I been there when it first released and played it, maybe I'd be like, this is great. But 20 years later, it's like,
yeah, exactly.
Not as exciting.
Yeah, definitely not as exciting. Well, let's talk about what are the. This is don't play. This is not good. Like this is not it, friend.
And we got to roll out all the pachinko games and casino games.
This is where we get canceled for our opinions.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where do you start? Because there's, I'm like looking at a list of the series. I know specifically you had said before this, you were like, don't say Castlevania 64. Don't say Castlevania 64. So I'm not going to say it.
No, you can say Castlevania 64. I just feel like it's in play. Let's talk about it. Like aside, we're here.
Well,
we're here now.
Do it. Well, yeah, because for me it's Castlevania 64. Like
Castlevania 64 is terrible in every way. Legacy of Darkness fixes it a little bit, but there's a certain part of me that's like, it's a little boring in how it's bad, because it's bad for a lot of early N64 reasons. Bad controls, bad camera,
clunk.
It's early 3D clunk. I think that also applies to my actual pick for the worst game in the series, which is The Adventure on the Game Boy.
Okay.
The Adventure was the first like it was a Game Boy. Basically, it was essentially a Game Boy launch title. It came out a month after.
Yeah, it's like hella early. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was I referenced this in the video I did on the adventure, but there was a period of time where like the Game Boy library was Super Mario Land, Tetris, and then like a sports game and Castlevania the Adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So, which was really cool, but also
that's like low.
Yeah, which it must have been cool at the time, but also it's so early in that lifespan that I think it's more fascinating than it is worth like just complaining about.
I'm with you though. Like 64 is a clunky mess, and then Adventure, I didn't play it. It's one of the ones I had to like do research on, but I would say it was a stepping stone because what was the next one on the Game Boy?
Belmonts Revenge.
Belmonts Revenge
is a pretty good game.
Yeah,
I had
really
that game
fun
as a kid, and that one is they did it well.
Yeah,
that is a hard Castlevania.
Yeah,
but
it has, you were referencing Mega Man. It has the Mega Man style level select.
Mm-hmm.
Level select, yeah,
which is a good idea. Jason, what is your either a hot take on 64 or what is your game?
64 I rented and it was like okay, like it wasn't like amazing. There was a big skeleton and he was funny, but no, I'd only played it for maybe like 2 hours because then I was like, this isn't really for me, so I kind of stopped. So I won't buy into the memes and whatnot, but if I had to pick maybe two types of games, I think the straight up worst Castlevania game I played isn't really a Castlevania, but it was the fighting game Judgment. That game was hot garbage.
Also an easy pick.
Yeah. The idea was so cool. And I really, really appreciate fighting games that try to develop a story that works for the universe, especially in this one, which spans like 15,000 years or whatever. But like, no, man, it's
Can we
not
just
good.
say no fighting games should have ever been made on the Wii? Like, is that just an easy?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe if it had regular controls, like it'd be okay too, but we'll see. I heard like some fan rumors being like, we should bring it back and redo it. And I'm like, should you? Like, I don't know.
We should not.
We're
going to bring Castlevania back. That's not where
that's not the one. The one that was, I think, the most disappointing though was, I got to remember the name. It's one of the, not Circle of the Moon. Wow. It's one of the Lords of Shadow games. I think it's the 3DS one that's called Mirror of Fate.
Okay.
I actually,
on the 3DS.
Yeah. Excuse me. I got to review that game when I was writing reviews, and it just wasn't good. Like it felt like they took, at the time there was always this dichotomy of console Castlevanias and portables, and the portables were your Metroidvanias and consoles were like God of War clones. And I feel like they took that style of the theming of the console version and put it on the 3DS and tried to like spin it as a Metroidvania, but it just didn't hit any of those like categories. It felt so boring and cashed in, and yeah, I hated it. And I feel like it might be like one of the last real styles of Castlevania games, quote unquote, like that came out. Because I think I think it was Lords of Shadow 2, and then I don't know what else came out after that. That wasn't like a casino game. Yeah, go ahead.
Lords of Shadow 2 was the last Castlevania game.
Okay. Because the only thing after that was that weird multiplayer 2D, but I mean, it wasn't really
the Grimoire of Souls. Is that the one?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Played it for a day and that was it.
Yeah. But I wanted to keep with the spirit of like no Castlevania 64 because I feel like those were easy targets. My more controversial pick for worst Castlevania game is Dracula X on the Super Nintendo.
Oh, way back then.
Yes.
That's the non-Rondo one, the shit one.
That's the SNES remake of Rondo. I don't know what you would call it exactly, but Rondo of Blood essentially is just too big for a Super Nintendo cartridge. It was released on I think TurboGrafx CD.
Turbo, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so they really like trimmed the game down and got it to fit onto a Super Nintendo cartridge. And unfortunately, they made a game that was total ass. I know a lot of people really like it.
I really like that game.
I think it's the weird circus sideshow that they added to the Advanced Collection because it's in that for some reason, which is like really strange.
Interesting.
And that's where I first played it, and I was like, "Oh my goodness!"
It has one of my favorite. It has one of my favorite tracks in all of Castlevania in that game.
What is that one?
I think it's Vampire Killer. It's like the intro song.
Oh,
the way they do it. It's just so good. Oh, Bopper, you just hurt me.
Yeah, well, Rondo, and I played Rondo afterwards, so this wasn't even like like I just think of all the classic style Castlevanias, it's the worst. I don't like it very much. So
I think Lords of Shadows 2 is the worst. Especially as we're saying, it is kind of like the end of the series because we don't know if we're going to get any more. I'm also hopeful that we are going to get more, because I feel like you don't tend to see remasters of games unless they're like trying to scrounge
thinking about it
for a new game. But Lords of Shadows 1 I don't think is that bad. I think it was trying to be a lot of different things, but I liked how it was this kind of like dark fantasy. I think there was just some, like PS3 clunk and jumping into something like 3D like that. I wish it had been a little bit more like the PS2 titles, but Lords of Shadows 2 is a hot garbage mess. It is the like we're in the future. You are Dracula. You can turn into a rat and die even though you're Dracula. Here's some hyper anime bullshit. Like it's just hot garbage.
It just lost the essence of Castlevania.
Yeah, it really did, which is my problem with it's kind of like the final. I'm gonna bring this in every fucking episode this season. I swear, and you know this, Jason.
I know
it's the Final Fantasy 13 of Castlevania. It's like the worst game ever.
Okay,
but at least Square gave it 3 more shots, and they're still going.
If they finally got there,
yeah, they got it right.
Lords of Shadow 2 also has the I guess 2 things. One, it has the force stealth, which is always awful.
Yeah, also that. Yep. Which, again, you're Dracula. Why do you need to stealth things? Just go eat them. Like, what the fuck?
Also, and this is just an asterisk I want to pin on it, which is that Final Fantasy 13 is actually pretty good, but we'll leave that.
Whoa.
We'll leave that for a very different episode somewhere.
Okay, so
I'm gonna invite you on to a bonus XP or side episodes, and you and I, my friend, are going to duke it out about Final Fantasy 13.
Yeah.
The past 10 minutes have been a collection of why Bopper will never come back on this podcast.
First it's Dracula X, then it's Final Fantasy 13. When will it stop?
When will it end?
So we spent some time hating, let's spend some time loving. What are some of the titles that you think are kind of underappreciated or are the unsung heroes?
I can start with this because it's going to go counter to what other people said so far. Maybe it's personal, but I liked the Game Boy's Castlevania Legends. I don't think people here necessarily hate it, but I don't think it's terrible. I think it was okay. And I think having only played Adventure and then not Belmont's Revenge, I haven't played that one. And then jumping to Legends
is good. It is good.
Good. I see the progression and how it looks better. I think they have full sub weapons in that game. Like the story is super early and it got retconned of all things. But like it was fun. I liked it. I thought it was okay for like transferring it over. It wasn't a bad choice. It's still nowhere near going to compare to the Game Boy Advance games, but I thought it was a good progression and I appreciated that one. I don't think it gets a lot of love and I think it was okay.
How about you, Bob?
Yeah, Legends was one I was going to say as well. Because I think what hurts Legends is that one, it was deemed not canon for dumb reasons. And that causes there are certain parts of certain fan bases that when something's not canon, they just disregard it entirely. Legends is also
but it's still fun.
Yeah, Legends is also super easy, and I think that causes a lot of Castlevania fans to overlook it. But
like it needs to meet some pedigree to be like a Castlevania game.
Like it's got to actually be tough. It's got to be Circle of the Moon where it just destroys you over and over again. It can't be Legends. But the actual ones I'd throw my hat behind, I guess, to not just copy you, Jason, would be Lament of Innocence on the PS2.
Oh, PS2.
Oh, it's so good. It is so good.
I have not played the only 3 Castlevania games I've never played are Curse of Darkness, Mirror of Fate, and Lords of Shadow 2. I just know about Lords of Shadow 2.
We just ratted on 2 of those, so you can skip those.
So I don't know about Curse of Darkness, but Lament of Innocence, it's not the best game ever, but I feel like I feel like people's hatred towards hate. Lords of Shadow and 64 sort of get guilt by association for being a console game over to it.
But I think Lament of Innocence would have been peak if we hadn't seen Capcom do Devil May Cry the way they did it.
Yeah,
like
true.
Devil May Cry 1
Similar.
is a better version of that game, but that doesn't mean that Lament of Innocence is bad. I really like Lament of Innocence too. I played the shit out of that game when it came out, so I'm there with you. I think that is definitely like that is a good attempt at a 2D Castlevania, or sorry, a 3D Castlevania.
Yeah, coming out 2 years after Devil May Cry definitely hurts, and it probably is even worse by Devil May Cry being an accident.
Yeah, we made a mistake. Look at this gold game. Yeah.
My game that's the unsung hero, and you said its name already. I actually think Curse of Darkness is a very good game. It is the Symphony of the Night of the 3D ones, because you have a lot of systems in there that I think are really cool. Like you have crafting, you have like monster collection that you can have as your companions. The combat really is like decent. I wouldn't say it's as snappy as Lament of Innocence, because Lament has the benefit of like you really only have one weapon, so they really can like design wise focus on what combat looks like in that game. But there's a nice sense of exploration and connectedness that Curse of Darkness had in a 3D world, where like Lament is a very it's very level based. You go somewhere, you complete it, you're pretty much done there. There's like might be an optional boss here or there, but you don't really have any reason to explore. And Curse had all of that, and it was also cool again not playing as a Belmont. In fact, Hector, the character in it, is one of the characters in the anime that came out.
Yeah, I was going to say too, I feel like part of the reason why some folks might even appreciate that game is just for that exact reason. The anime was pretty cool, features all those characters, so
yeah,
it's great. Yeah. Also, sub-story, if any random listeners would like to donate to Jason's game collection, I don't have Curse of Darkness, and it's hella expensive. If you want to just send that my way, that'd be great.
You can send it to me, too.
Okay, send it to... Patrick doesn't need it, so you can send it to Bopper first, then me.
You can send it, I'll take the disc, he'll take the case.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah. We do this, I think, every time we do a series deep dive. So I have a feeling we're all going to have very similar answers, but we'll see. If you had to group the games together in chunks, whether that's by like the system or like combo systems they released on, or maybe just even time period, like if something released on PS1 at the same time it released on N64, whatever, what would you say is the like superior grouping of these games? We'll do guest first. Bopper, you can go ahead and
so I have the games, like when I look at my grouping of the games, basically I feel like I did it a little too granular, because I've got the classic era, which is then subdivided between console and handheld, because I think they're different enough. Then you've got the Metroidvania, then you've got the 3D era, and then Lords of Shadow as its own era. And obviously,
it is. It's got 3 games.
Yeah, it's got 3 games. Obviously, Lords of Shadow is the best era. No, I would say my favorite era, because we haven't.
I know it's tough. You're picking your favorite child here, Bopper.
It's so tough. I think my heart wants to say the classic era, the classic console games, Castlevania, Simon's Quest, like those 3, Bloodlines, 4, Bloodlines especially, and Rondo, I think are all fantastic. But I do want to give a special kind of notice to the DS era. I think the DS era sometimes, because they're expensive, they've never been re-released, they're on like a weird console that isn't easy to port stuff off of.
It's be really, really hard to redo what they did on those. Yeah,
because it's easy to port the GBA games to the Switch and to Steam, but the DS games are a whole separate issue. I like the DS games a lot. I like Dawn of Sorrow a lot. I know it has the annoying stylus mechanic where you have to draw the seals.
Draw your root. Yeah.
And I think that's so cool. I think like just especially I'm so into like anytime there's the demon stuff in video games, like to me that's so cool. So when they're like, you need to seal this bitch, like okay, I'll draw the seal. That's done. Okay.
Portrait of Ruin, I think, is really underappreciated. And Order of Ecclesia, I kind of hate, but I love the look of the game. I love the style.
You heard it. You heard it here first. Bopper's a woman hater.
Oh my God, Shanoa.
Shanoa's not the problem. The giant crab boss in the tower is the problem.
Oh,
yeah.
Damn. Shanoa's
well,
great.
I can piggyback off that a little bit too. I think it's kind of funny. We actually really didn't talk about the DS games that much here. For me, when I'm grouping them, I group them in similar boats that you did, Bopper. But I think I had to pick between the 3 Game Boy Advance games and the 3 DS games.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had to be like, which ones did I want to play again? It's all 3 Game Boy Advance games. But if I was like, which 3 do I want to keep? It's the DS games. I think those ones refined it much more, and they offer uniqueness among the 3 of them. So I think Aria of Sorrow on Game Boy Advance is better than Dawn of Sorrow on the DS. But outside of that, I think Portrait of Ruin is such an underappreciated game that you don't really hear about like at all. And it is so cool. And it's
Dracula and Death fuse.
Yeah, it's crazy.
No, you don't need to say anything else. Like Dracula and Death just fuse.
And like
that's only happened twice.
They do some neat stuff with the dual screens. So like Patrick's talking about the sigils in Dawn of Sorrow. That's cool. But in this one, you can you use Charlotte and Jonathan in unique ways on the top and bottom. It is so neat. That train puzzle is really cool. And like that is really fun. And then lastly, Bopper hinted at this too. Order of Ecclesia is freaking beautiful. Like that is a wonderful game. And like it looks so awesome. It came out pretty late in the DS life, and I feel like people just missed it. That is so cool. And like it's great. And yeah, Shanoa is a wonderful character, and the storyline is really neat. The art is so cool. Like that is such a fun game, and those are the ones I think you would experience and appreciate more as time goes on. I really think as we develop and I don't know, game collectors grow, or circles, look back at what was a standout game, it's going to be those 3 that really come back.
So I have the same issue, Jason, that you did, because I was torn between those 2. And first of all, I will say, I think it's really hard to choose this because it's hard to choose between classic Castlevania and Metroidvania Castlevania, because it really is apples and oranges. Like they overlap, but they're not alike,
Right.
And then even if you throw in the 2D versus 3D stuff, but for me, I think the GBA 3 are I wouldn't say the better 3, but I think as a package they are
they're
because
great.
they are diverse enough. I think, as I said, like at the beginning, Circle of the Moon is the perfect complement to Symphony of the Night, and I think it also was a good reboot for that type of game. If you wanted something a little bit more classic, then you could play Harmony of Dissidence, and then if you wanted to see kind of like what the future was, you had Aria.
Literally, yeah.
So to me, I think those 3 are like the golden era of it. I think, like you said, the 3DS took it a little bit further, but there's a very big sameness to those 3. I think like graphically they very much so look the same. I didn't pick up Order of Ecclesia until later, and I know the way you play the game is different. The drawing mechanic, but I still feel like there's just a big sameness, but they're still great games. But I would give it to the GBA.
It's just impressive, to be honest, that like between the 3 of us, we named off like 10 or 11 absolute bangers of like games that you can go back and play, and like any one of them I'm like, like you didn't pick what I picked, but I can respect that. That's sure. Impressive. Impressive for any series.
Yeah.
All right, to end our discussion on Castlevania, and again, my heart shatters every time thinking that we haven't had an entry in a while.
9 years. 9 years.
Yeah.
And that's Lords of Shadow 2.
Yeah, Lords of Shadow 3 coming out.
Oh no, Lords of Castlevania on the Moon. What direction would you like to see the series taken from here? Like if we got a new one, and if you want to break that up into 3D versus 2D, that's fine. If you just want to talk about one or the other, like we are seeing spiritual successors, but if it was just Castlevania, what would you like to see?
Okay, hear me out. So just imagine if we just crossed like the style of gameplay of something like Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom with Castlevania. And it's not as cray hard. Hang on. Not as cray hard as Dark Souls. I think that might sell like hotcakes because I feel like people would really enjoy that. And I think I would love to see like in the distance there is the big castle. I can go to the side. I can find these characters, level up, grind, find weapons. I think that would be really fun. I feel like that's the future of the series, like in my mind with what they could do with it. But what I would personally want to see is just another Castlevania portable game. Like you can make Portrait of Ruin 2 and like just do that again, exact same thing, and I would play the shit out of that.
That's a good idea. Team portable, I think, is a good way to think of
just
it.
Because
we do
portable.
have the option. It doesn't have to be on PlayStation. Doesn't have to be on Nintendo. Like it could, or it doesn't have to be on both. It could be exclusive. So that's good. Totally. Bopper, how about you?
I have kind of two answers to this question. I guess one's an actual answer, one's an avoidance of the question. The answer is I want to see. I just want to see Castlevania make a Dark Souls clone.
Yeah,
I want to see because especially like with Bloodborne, where you have the whip as one of your weapons, it's always been in my head that like. You know, they
that could be the vampire killer. Yeah,
that could be the vampire killer. They could make a game with these mechanics, and I think their ambition to do a 3D game back on the 64 and somewhat on the PlayStation 2, I think with modern hardware, they could actually make like a good one now that's not full of like clunk. My other thing, and then this is probably. I don't know if anyone else would agree with this, but I'm actually kind of okay with the series being over and not ever coming back because one, I think the spiritual successors, I think Koji Igarashi doing Bloodstained, I think the existence of games like Hollow Knight or Dead Cells, I think the influence of Castlevania is so thoroughly steeped in gaming's DNA now that it's never going anywhere. And I think Konami, for all of their awful problems, and Konami really is like the reason why we'll probably never see the series again. They have actually done, I think, a really good job of preserving the series and keeping it available because unlike, I'm looking at a list of every Castlevania game right now, and there's only a small handful that you cannot go and easily access right now. Legends is like even like Haunted Castle, the 1988 arcade game. You can play that. They have that on the Konami Arcade Collection. It's really just Legends isn't available. The DS games, because I imagine that's just a troublesome era to try to port. And then Mirror of Fate. Beyond that, everything else in the series is like on Steam or on the Switch. In collections
or on like a 2 generation ago console, which isn't that far, not that hard to get a hold of,
right? So I think the 64 games are also unavailable. I imagine at some point they'll put those out.
That's for the best. I can stay there.
I imagine at some point those in the PS2 games will get dug out. Really, the only game on here that's in any danger is the Adventure Rebirth, because that was a WiiWare exclusive game. There has no physical copy and is like, if you're on WiiWare, you're just screwed because no one cares. So I think Konami, as long as they like preserve the series and keep it going, like keeping it available and keeping it in good shape, I'm honestly happy with that. Because even like the Kid Dracula games, you can get those.
Yeah.
I am so with you on like a Bloodborne Media. Like I think it's written itself. You could literally say that like Bloodborne is just a Castlevania game, just because I think having a curated list of, these like trick hunter weapons is just such a good idea. I think Castlevania is kind of at its best when it has its edgier side. And it's rooted a lot more in those gothic worlds. So if it was something 3D, I completely agree. I don't think it has to be the most narrative heavy game, which is I think where Lords of Shadows fell apart. But if it's a 2D game, I know we're talking about Bloodstained, and like I really like the ones that are harken more to the classic. I'm not the biggest fan of their Metroidvania entry because I think it literally is let's blend every element from every game into this game. so that way we
loses some of the uniqueness.
Yeah, and I think because that like I 100% obviously fine with the female protagonist, but I think they like sexyified her. I think again, like it doesn't feel like Castlevania, it feels like an anime. And I'm not anti-anime by any means, but if we're gonna do something that's a spiritual successor, I don't want it to be a spiritual successor because we told you it is. So there are certain things about it that just really take me away from it being the next step that the classic ones, the classic Bloodstained games don't. Like they still fit completely to me. So if they reboot a 2D game is what I'm saying, I want it to feel very Castlevania, and that could be anything from 3DS or sorry DS and before. Like I think any of those games really showed you what we liked most about it, and it doesn't have to be here's every element from any game ever in it, you know. Either that or just Castlevania 64 reloaded.
reloaded take 2. All right. Well, that was the deepest of deep dives into one of the coolest series, I think, of all time. Thank you, Bopper Patrick, for sharing your opinions. I really love
Castlevania 64 Reloaded.
Reloaded needs to happen. Come on. Konami, just make any game, please. That would be great. But we're going to take another quick break and we'll be right back. Before we go, though, if you do like what you're hearing, we'd love to hear back from you. We always say you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RPGaymer. Also, our Discord is always hopping. We love to chat about games on there, too. And then lastly, if you like this podcast so far, leave us a review and we'll be right back.
And we are back for part 2 of our episode, and as usual, we're playing a game, and as usual, we are playing poorly described things, because what else would we do on this podcast?
It's a Patrick favorite. Yeah.
It really, like, I love it, because we get to be so creative. Although I will say, in the past few episodes, we've done the Would You Rather, and that one has been pretty fun as well. But if you're just tuning in for the first time, we are going to poorly describe Castlevania things for each other and see if we can guess. Feel free to play along at home, but we're going to, like, it could be a item, place, monster, people, whatever. Poorly describe them and give a couple clues. And since Bopper is our guest today, we are going to let him go ahead and quiz us first. So Bopper, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
So this one, I imagine for you, is going to be, for you, Patrick, is going to be a little easier since you've seen some of my stuff.
Okay, well, I'll guess first then.
Yeah.
I mean, we're both going to guess.
And for anyone that's seen my stuff, they'll probably get this immediately. But a big time merchant, his weapons mean you won't take that small check.
Oh. Big time merchant. His weapons mean you won't take that check.
That small check. Backup clue. Backup clue can just be like what game or anything like that.
Okay, yeah. If you want to give us the game.
Aria of Sorrow.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking. And what is his name?
I thought the merchant in Aria of Sorrow was a woman. I thought it was like Yoko Bonaldez or whatever. Is it not?
There's two. There's two merchants in Aria.
Oh, you can just tell us. It's fine.
Yeah. It's Hammer.
Hammer! That's it.
Oh, call the Hammer.
Yeah. Yes.
Duh.
He's the bald guy, though, right?
Yeah, he's
right
the bald guy. You were
okay, good.
Right
I can see him sitting right there looking at you in his freaking portrait.
Yeah, he's the guy that sells you weapons in both Aria and Dawn of Sorrow.
Hammer.
Did I tell you that we have advertisements for him here too?
You do?
Yeah, we for the Hammer. It's really all
the Hammer
on TV and on the interstate. Like when you're driving, you can see called the Hammer.
Is it a different Hammer, or is it still Daryl Isaacs the Hammer?
It is Daryl Isaacs. It's the same guy.
Yes, this is a reference to his because his whole thing is don't take that small check. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Now it's all clicking. It is all clicking. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Oh, good. That was good. All right. I will go
Go
next.
Go ahead.
All right. The true intersection of Christianity and Australia.
What the fuck?
The true intersection of Christianity and Australia.
Is it like a demon kangaroo or something?
Yes, Jason, it is a demon kangaroo.
I don't know.
I mean, there's probably
I mean, if it was I was
yeah.
I mean, there's probably
If not, here's
like
some
that floating around
content.
somewhere in the series.
Yeah. I wonder, is it an enemy or is it like a location?
I'm not. Do you want the next clue, guys?
Sure.
It's almost impossible to get rid of this thing.
Christianity in Australia?
And you can't get rid of it, or it's hard to get rid of.
It's hard to get rid of.
What is unique to Australia? Like, what is Patrick thinking?
Like, I'm trying to think of like
that is a good logic.
trying to think of animals. There's the outback, land down under.
Kangaroos. Wait, but Christianity? Is it the little flea enemy?
Is not the flea enemy.
Ah, damn.
Do you want your last clue?
Oh, that's Christian. Bopper, what do you think? Last clue?
Last clue.
It's arguably the best weapon in the game.
It's a weapon? What the heck? Okay. Wait. What was the second clue?
Is it the?
It's almost. Go ahead, Bopper.
Is it the gun in Aria of Sorrow?
A Glock is obviously the intersection of Christianity and Australia. Yeah. No, it's almost impossible to get rid of this thing.
It's the best weapon.
It's arguably the best weapon. Or do you want your?
Is it just the boomerang cross?
Yes.
Okay, good. Got it. I was trying to think that last clue. I'm like, wait a minute.
Australia, boomerang.
Yeah, I get it. Jesus.
All right, Jason, let's go.
Oh God. Okay, where do I want to start here? Okay. This fashionista isn't afraid to get what he wants. He can swing by at any time.
This fashionista.
He's gonna get what he wants. He's gonna swing by anytime.
Is this a boss?
Very possible, I suppose.
See, I don't know. Immediately I'm thinking swings. I'm thinking of the Castlevania 4 swinging, but that doesn't seem to fit. And I know that there's like clothes you can pick up in like one of the DS games.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the headhunter?
It is not.
The guy who like the guy who swaps heads on.
No.
Okay, yeah. Give clue 2.
Why did he even steal my mail though? If he's not even going to wear it?
Oh gosh.
Why did he steal my mail if he's not going to wear it?
Because I'm going to assume he's referring to mail as an armor, like chainmail. So there's like a boss or something that steals your like equipment. Mm-hmm. So it's probably something from one of the Metroidvanias, I would guess.
I can give you your final clue. He is a boss from the very, very beginning.
Is it just like the floating armor in the Harmony?
He doesn't. I feel like he usually doesn't even have legs. No. He could swing by any time.
Oh, Dullahan?
No. Oh, good guess though, but no.
I don't know. I think you stumped us.
Did I? Is this the first time I've stumped someone on this game?
I think so.
Okay. It is Death or the Grim Reaper.
Oh.
He steals Alucard's armor in the very beginning of the game.
That's
and
right.
Okay.
And he could swing by at any time because Death is always around the corner.
So I also had death for one of mine, and it was
what are your clues?
Somehow the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, has the worst win ratio.
Yeah.
He was always losing, and then he's in almost every game, and he's usually the final or the penultimate boss.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, Bopper.
Okay.
Back to you.
He was living on the wall so long that everyone forgot about him and wrote him out.
My mind is first going to I don't know the name of it. Is it the bone snake the enemy?
No.
That could be mounted on the wall? Oh, damn.
I get what you're talking about though, Jason. Like the
Yeah.
living on the wall for so long, but everybody forgot about him.
Is it like a painting? Is it a portrait of ruin thing? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not sure here either. What's your backup clue?
This is a playable character.
Oh shit. Oh, is this Julius?
Or no, is it Grant? Because nobody plays as Grant.
It is Grant. It is.
Grant. And he can climb the walls. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
and
I got one.
He was written out of the story for the anime.
Right.
The anime is Castlevania 3, and he's the only playable character that didn't make it.
Dang, nice. That's a good one. I like that.
So I like
the
Grant. Anime, but sometimes it goes on the most meta rants that makes the show just so not exciting to watch.
Start fighting stuff, please.
I've only seen halfway through season 2. I just stopped because they were spending all season locked in a basement, and I was like,
yeah,
and I bailed.
Quite literally.
I feel like it comes back around, but it's not like ever as great as you might want it to be.
Yeah, but they are doing the other game as a they're doing another Castlevania series. I can't remember which one it is, but it has I think it's Maria, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a Rondo of Blood they're doing now.
Yeah. Okay, my turn.
Go ahead.
Not the first, but not the first.
Not the first?
Not the first, but not the first.
Okay, I feel like it's got to be a game.
It's not a game.
Oh, what the? It's not just Lament of Innocence. Yeah. Okay.
It's not Lord of Shadow.
Not the first. Is it a Belmont or something? A character? Is it Sonia?
There's not Sonia.
Dang. Okay. Oh, I thought those were two good guesses. I don't know. What else you got?
Whips and chains excite him.
Oh my god, it's just Rihanna again.
Yeah. It's always Rihanna. That's actually the answer. Rihanna Belmont.
Rihanna Belmont.
Is it Alucard?
It's not Alucard.
Whips and chains.
Not the first, but not the first.
Is it just Simon Belmont?
Yeah, it's just Simon Belmont.
Okay. Because he's not the earliest Belmont, but he's the first game.
Yeah, he's in the first game, but he's not the earliest Belmont.
I get you. That wasn't poorly described. That was well described.
Yeah, that was almost like it was hidden in plain sight. You got everybody thinking.
Yeah, exactly.
You got everybody thinking their favorite Belmont, Christopher.
It's like Dracula using stealth.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, it's my turn, right?
It is.
All right, let's see how you get on this one. Do you too dislike being the forgotten child, constantly overshadowed by your older sibling, compared but never quite able to reach their standard? Do you too dislike being the forgotten child, constantly overshadowed by your older sibling, compared but never quite able to reach their standard?
Is it Nathan Graves?
Oh, it is Nathan Graves.
Yeah.
Always forgotten. Yeah. Your other clues were, oh man, you're saying I don't even get to use the vampire killer, and then a portable game where you don't get to play as a Belmont.
Yeah.
Ugh, poor Nate.
God, I completely forgot that he had the sibling thing. I knew he had the issue with his dad, but
Yeah, exactly. Also, it was a double entendre because the older sibling could have technically been Symphony of the Night, and I was like, hey, it still works. So,
it did sound like that for a second.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Bopper, this is last round.
Okay. So I'm just going to tell you right from the beginning, this is a boss. This is a double barrel boss fight where both are portrayed by Bela Lugosi. Give a little tie-in to the classic horror movie inspiration of the series.
I'm gonna pretend I know what you said.
Yeah.
Bela Lugosi played Dracula in the old movies.
Okay.
Did he play? He must have played someone else. I'm assuming that's what you mean. Is there a boss fight where you fight Dracula and someone else?
Yeah, you fight Dracula and Death in a couple of them.
Interesting. But what else did Bela Lugosi do? Shit. This is good. What else you got? I'm curious.
This is a NES fight.
Yeah, you might have got me on this one too.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Is it funny? We're all like, yeah, this series legit. I know all this series.
I've been completely wiped on this whole game, so there's just so much Castlevania to keep track of.
There is. All right, what is it, Bopper?
I don't know what it is. Yeah.
It is the Frankenstein monsters fight in Castlevania 1, because you fight Frankenstein and Igor, both of whom are played by Lugosi. In Son of Frankenstein, Lugosi played Igor, and in Ghost of Frankenstein, he played the monster.
Dang, what a take. Wow, that is
the movie buff coming in.
So this, I wouldn't feel bad because this is like some deep trivia. Like Castlevania. You're good.
I have a feeling that Bopper is that kind of person where you take him to trivia night and you win. Like he's your
and you win.
You just win.
Yeah.
It depends. I mean, the name Alucard also originates in the film Son of Dracula. So like there's very deep ties in this series to the Universal horror movies of the 30s and 40s. So I wanted to at least give some acknowledgement to him in this game.
All right. Well,
or do you want me to end? Okay.
Oh, I'll go. I mean, like, if I don't see one, I'll throw in one more extra just to keep it going a little bit.
Okay.
When your drag persona is the Lord of the Night.
Is it just Dragula?
No, it's not Dragula.
Okay.
When your drag persona is the Lord of the Night.
The Lord of the Night. Okay.
This is not a Soma, is it?
It is Soma, yeah.
Oh, damn.
My next clue was, who would have thought that Dracula was actually a 17-year-old Japanese boy?
Oh, there you go.
Soma.
I love it.
Yes, I got one. So I feel good about it now.
You got one. There you go. Yeah.
If you do New Game Plus as like the other three characters and you go to like Dracula's chambers, Soma's sitting there. And if you're playing as Julius Belmont, he just goes, Soma.
That's right. What a cool game. All right, I got one more. Here we go. Okay. You can get this rarity in a variety of ways and a variety of games.
Cocaine.
Be sure to use protection or you might get a concussion.
It's the rock feather.
No, but that is a great guess.
Because
you just slam it to the ceiling.
The number of times as a kid in Circle of the Moon where I would just slam Nathan to the ceiling over and over, and you get that.
And he would suddenly like land, and he'd be okay.
That's the only way I was able to beat the final boss was to keep doing that over and over again.
Yeah, spam that over and over.
Absolutely.
Is it the? This is not it, but it's what my brain went to. Is it the hidden mushroom that's always behind a waterfall in a lot of the Metroidvanias? It's hard to get to that you need like.
It is not.
Okay.
It is not.
What's the clue one more time?
You can get this rarity in a variety of ways and a variety of games. Be sure to use protection or you might get a concussion. This one's a little out there. How about I give you clue 2?
Sure.
Vampire Killer was first and I was second. I've brought the action to dozens of Dracula's biggest adventures. I'm sorry. Biggest adversaries. I brought the action to dozens of Dracula's biggest adversaries.
So it's a weapon, but you don't necessarily need the weapon. Is there a weapon that you can hurt yourself with?
Can you repeat that second hint again?
There's some subtlety to this clue. So Vampire Killer was first and I was second. I've brought the action to dozens of Dracula's biggest adversaries.
I'm trying to think, what weapons? Okay.
Is it the axe?
Here, I'll give you clue 2-2B. Vampire Killer isn't always a weapon.
Bloody Tears?
Bloody Tears, you got it. That's the one.
Yeah, that's one of the songs that I really like. Yeah,
I love it.
That is also one of my favorite songs of all time in Castlevania.
Yes.
I am so proud of this clue. I was like, there's so much entendre in this, and I literally put a playlist on of just an hour and a half of all the remixes of Bloody Tears as I was writing this, and Laura's like, is this the same song just over and over again?
I'm not gonna lie.
Like, yes,
I was also listening to that when I was doing my notes. So it was probably the exact same one.
So good. Also, if I give any credit to Castlevania Judgment, it's that it has a pretty banging soundtrack. That's the only good thing it has for it. If you like rock songs, you listen to Judgment.
I actually have a funny one for us to end on, if you guys are okay with that.
Yeah.
If we want to do one more. Okay. This is a good one. I was happy about this one. World's largest undead orgy.
Oh fuck! It's it's Legion, isn't that?
It's Legion.
It's Legion. Where you hit him and the naked bodies just fall down over and over again, and the background is everyone. Oh my god, Patrick!
My clues were, where are those lasers coming from? And then that's where those lasers are coming from. Worst orgy ever.
Nice. Oh my gosh, fucking Legion.
That was
Oh, Legion is disgusting.
Yeah, it's kind of gross.
They did him in the anime, and it I think they did a pretty good job of that. That was cool. Good. Yeah. Well, Bopper, we are so happy that we had you here today. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you for having me.
Gladly we'll take you back at some point. Maybe we'll pull in some of your Fire Emblem brethren the next time, so that way you guys can roast each other, because nothing makes me happier than watching you all just like talk shit. talk shit and rage quit would be the name of like a Fire Emblem podcast.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
That is what it feels like a lot of the time. So
what are some of the projects that you're working on now? Like, I know that you're doing a Among Us inspired Fire Emblem run with some of the other Fire Emblem streamers, but what else are you doing right now, projects wise, like videos coming out? Or
I've got a new Fire Emblem video that'll be a couple new that are in the pipeline that are going to come out over the next couple of months. Right now, also, I'm continuing work on the Castlevania retrospective. It's been very slow because I've only gotten 3 out in like 8 months. But
hey man, just enjoy the games. Yeah. Take your time and enjoy it.
Yeah. I've got a video on the GBA trilogy. I'm kind of skipping ahead because I had just a lot of material on it, and I was ready to make that. Doing that, and I've been also revisiting the GameCube Pokemon games.
Those have been fun to watch.
Yeah, just got done streaming Coliseum, and I'm about to have a video about Coliseum coming out, and then we'll probably revisit XD Gale of Darkness after that.
Have fun.
So that's what's going on right now. But the great thing about YouTube is that all the back catalog is there, so I can just say that's what I've been working on. Yeah, just go watch that stuff.
If you want some high-tiered takes on, I mean, not even just Fire Emblem, but like movies, indie games, like you did that one on Signalis, which was really good. You just have some great content, man. Like, I always enjoy seeing your stuff come out.
Yeah, I'll pump the Signalis video for everybody else because I'm really proud of that video.
It was good. That was a good one.
All right, well, thank you, Bopper, for being here. It's always a pleasure. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Hopefully you all enjoy Castlevania as much as we very clearly do. And hit us up with your trivia questions. I want to know more. Again, Twitter and Instagram at RPGaymer. Always chat over on Discord. Special shout out to our patrons over there. Really appreciate all of your support for making things like this happen, supporting the show, and really just being awesome people. Y'all are the best.
If you enjoyed listening to us today, be on the lookout for our season finale, end of season 3 RPG minigames coming up in 2 weeks. We appreciate you all for listening and hope you had a great time. Now go out there and get gaming.